Research methods. This week we look more in depth at the discovery process. We will introduce a few research methods today and focus in on one research method that will likely be the most used during your UX career. We're going to teach you how to conduct interviews and give you some practice this week, both interviewing and analyzing your research data. But first, let's talk about a few different methods of research and how each might be used to inform your design decisions. By the end of this lesson, you will learn how to create a research plan by defining assumptions and hypotheses, and you'll learn how to create a list of research questions that need answers. Research methods. So there are a few discovery methods that are useful in UX design for gathering the types of information you need to move forward with design. Understanding these methods can help you more effectively gather data that will inform quality design decisions. Here we introduce a few methods to be considered. Surveys. Surveys are useful to help you understand how your user base might be segmented. They give you a chance to model your audience statistically and make generalizations about how your user base compares to the population as a whole. Surveys allow you to gather details about your user base that will help inform your decisions about who to recruit for qualitative research. Surveys are sets of questions that allow you to get information from a large number of people in a structured and useful way. They can ask people about themselves, their interests, and preferences. The results of surveys can be evaluated with statistical tools. That is, with a large enough number of people, you can begin to extrapolate the findings of your survey to the broader population with mathematical certainty. You can know just how likely you are to be making a mistake if you base your design decisions on data collected from a survey with a large enough sample size. As a rule of thumb, you want to aim for around 350 participants. You might need less if you have a smaller population you want to represent, but having 350 will generally give you enough to extrapolate data to a larger audience. You should generally plan on a survey project taking 4 to 6 weeks to account for question writing and survey setup, fielding the survey, and analysis. Contextual inquiry. Contextual inquiry helps you understand people and their behavior regarding your problem space. Observing people in their natural environment helps the researcher study the scenarios their product is meant to assist with to learn more about the user's mental model associated with the problem at hand. Contextual inquiry is a process of observing and studying a few individuals in depth to more fully understand the work practice or life practice of the group of people the individuals represent. It is a great, though labor-intensive, way to uncover the problems behind the problems. As Mike Kunovsky wrote in Observing the User Experience, the obvious problem isn't always the real problem. The person who wants a new hammer and smaller nails, maybe she really just needs a cheap birdhouse, so she's making one. Once she's done, maybe she'll never need the hammer and nails again. Observing people directly often helps you discover those real underlying problems that need a solution, rather than the obvious superficial problem. A contextual inquiry study can take around 3 to 4 weeks to plan and complete. Focus groups. Focus groups can help gauge people's priorities and emotional connections to problems or concepts. They can help gauge responses to possible solutions and help raise additional concerns to the surface. Focus groups are generally a structured interview of around 8 to 10 people. Focus groups are often conducted in multiple sessions, so you have 2 to 3 separate group interviews with a new set of participants in each interview. Focus groups can often require additional planning and recruiting to gather all the necessary participants. Group interviews also have to be carefully moderated to avoid the groupthink that is often a hallmark of poorly conducted focus groups. Using focus groups in combination with other research will provide a richer understanding of your user base and their desires, values, motivations, and experiences. You can use focus groups to explore the nature of human experience in a specific domain. Prioritize features intended for use by the represented audience. Analyze competitors' products by interviewing their users. And investigate trends to understand the underlying behaviors more closely. Focus groups take approximately 3 weeks to plan, execute, and analyze. Usability testing. Usability testing can be used in user research to discover interaction problems. They can be used for competitive benchmarking and/or a quick way to evaluate solutions in progress. Usability testing is generally a fast way to avoid launching a product that has quote-unquote show-stopping usability issues. You conduct them by interviewing individual users while watching them use your product, ideally in performing specified tasks. Usability tests can be performed at any stage in the product design cycle and at any stage of fidelity. They don't need to be reserved for the end of a cycle after development has been completed. You don't need to perform very many to be useful. Around 5 interviews with representatives of a specific user type is generally enough to find a sufficient number of usability problems for a particular phase in the design process. But conducting a single usability test of only 5 participants is not going to find all usability problems and is not going to be sufficient for making ongoing improvements to a particular product or feature. A 5 to 7 participant usability study can generally be planned, conducted, and analyzed within 2 to 3 weeks. Analytics. Analytics can be reviewed to learn actual behavior on a site or app, which can uncover pain points in user inclinations, pointing to areas for further research or investigation. Site or app analytics can be a great resource for understanding actual user behavior. Most companies now use an analytics platform like Google Analytics or Adobe's Marketing Cloud to track user activity. By gaining access to the analytics product, user researchers can track things like the number of visitors to a specific page, number of clicks or taps on a specific interaction element, time on a page, or even progress through a purchase funnel. This data can be very informative of trends, but is not explanatory. Analytics tracking can be coupled with other research methods to make testable hypotheses for additional research. Analytics can be an ongoing process of review. Exploratory analysis can take much longer than discovering the results of a very targeted query. Determining what to research. Making a research plan requires critical thinking skills and a sense of the product you're intending to create, or the market that you intend to serve. From there, you can begin to follow a relatively simple process that will help you identify things you need to know more about and things about which you know enough. Assumptions exercise. You can quickly surface most assumptions about a product by having a quick discussion about the product plan using a list of statements for stakeholders to complete. So when we're talking about user assumptions, we can use statements like, who is the user? Where does our product fit in their work or life? What problems does our product solve? When and how is our product used? What features are important? How should our product look and behave? For business assumptions, I believe that my users and customers have a need to. This can be solved with, my initial customers will be, the number one value my customer wants to get out of my service is, I will make money by, and my biggest product risk is. Not all questions need to be answered. For example, if the product you're designing does not have direct measurable profitability, you can determine a different metric as the basis of your assumption and how that metric impacts the growth or strength of the business. Take the time to evaluate each assumption. Separate out those assumptions that could have negative consequences for the company if they're wrong. Use a known, unknown, high-risk, low-risk scale to find the most critical assumptions. Rank the most critical assumptions on a scale of urgency. Ask, what assumptions does my business hold that, if proven wrong, could cause the business to fail? This list of assumptions can form the basis of your discovery research efforts at the beginning of your design cycle. Create testable hypotheses for each assumption. Hypotheses to research questions. Work from the top of the list of hypotheses as quickly as you can to plan for research that can help validate or invalidate your assumptions. One way to do this is to create a list of more specific questions based on your hypotheses that could be answered with research. Not all the questions will be able to be answered with the same type of research method, so you can then organize your research plan by aligning each question in the list with the type of research that will most effectively answer the question. Questions that can more effectively be answered with an in-person interview should be refined further. Most general research questions are not effective as interview questions. One usually would need to ask more deep and probing questions. Those questions become part of an interview guide that helps you remember more effectively the questions that will help you validate or invalidate your hypotheses.